It's crazy how remarkably similar Shiny Cramorant looks to Ho-Oh, right? That that's something that I didn't realize when I was in the process of coming up with the concept for this video, but when I was thinking about what I should make the thumbnail and I happened to find this, I was like, well, of course I've got to make a joke about it. Hello everyone, this is Tetrafolium, and I'm here today to talk about not ADV Ubers, or sorry, ADV OU. I'm actually here to talk about DPP Ubers. I know, we're not even going to ADV Ubers, we're skipping a whole generation here, but don't worry, if you're somebody who is more into the ADV aspect of it, we're going to be talking quite a bit about ADV, more so about how things have changed going into DPP. So consider this to be like maybe a little bit of a gateway into DPP if you're interested in that sort of thing. And in particular, if you're interested in going into Ubers in DPP, because I think this is a really fun format. I mean, BKC says it's one of the best formats ever. And well, I don't know if I've played enough to know if that's necessarily the case, but it's been pretty fun for me, and I want to make a video about it, so here we go. So here is the Uber's viability rankings. I don't know how much community effort is put into this, or if this was just one person's particular rankings. It's one of the first things that came up on Smogon, at the very least, when I typed this in. This is from 2014, so 12 years of time have passed. I don't know how accurate this is, but I do think the top is pretty close to right. Kyogre and the Sinnoh legendaries are absolutely busted in DPP Ubers. You might notice that Arceus is not here. Arceus is actually not allowed in DPP Ubers, at least not anymore. There is a sub-format, I think, called Farseus that lets you use that Pokemon, which I pronounce as Arceus, by the way. If you pronounce it Arceus, then that's fine, but that's not how I do it, so. So at least the very top of this tier list, I think, is probably about right. As for, like, some of the more, the non-Ubers Pokemon, like Heatran and Scizor being ranked as high as they are, I'm not entirely sure about that. I'm also, I mean, maybe I'm a little biased, but I feel like Ho-Oh and Lugia are quite a bit better than Manaphy and probably also Skarmory, but maybe that's just me. Bronzong, I in my limited experience, I would probably put higher as well. Deoxys normal, why would you ever use that thing when all the other Deoxys are basically doing its job but better? Well, okay, enough philosophizing about a tier list that I'm probably underqualified to be talking about at this stage. I'm barely even qualified to talk about ADV OU's tier list, let's be real. In fact, I'm literally not. But, alright, enough Tetra slander at the beginning of the video, okay? You guys are going so hard on me. I'm trying to just make content for you, and you're already starting in on me. Like, what the heck is this, man? Sorry, I'm projecting quite a bit, but let's get some different engagement going. I want to know, who's your favorite box legendary? For me, it probably is Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh is, like, it's got so much aura, right? Like, it's in the, is it the first or second episode of the anime where Ash, like, it's the first thing he sees basically after him and Pikachu have their first, like, come together heart-to-heart moment. And from there, it just, like, builds on the aura. I really like its representation in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team. Mount Faraway is a really cool dungeon, and it's a really cool boss fight, especially in RTDX. Like, they did a really good job with the cutscene in that. And also, HeartGold, one of the best boss fights, maybe in Pokemon history. But all that being said, yeah, Ho is probably my favorite. If I had to pick another favorite, or like a second favorite, I guess that's kind of hard because I'm not a big fan of a lot of them. I guess I like both Palkia and Dialga. If I had, I guess I like Palkia a little bit better, but not by a ton. They're both really cool. So, yeah, maybe that's 2 and 3 for me. Let's talk about the DPP Glow Up. In fact, quite a few Pokemon really liked the transition from Gen 3 to Gen 4. And a big reason why that is the case is something that's called the physical special split. So, as you know, in Gen 3, whether a move is considered a physical or a special attack is completely dependent on its type. So, for example, if you have a ghost type move, regardless of what move that is, it is always physical in Gen 3. Likewise, if you have a dark type move, it is always special. In Gen 4, that's not the case. It's completely an individual artifact of the move that is chosen. So, you know, for example, Shadow Ball is a special move, but Shadow Claw is a physical move, despite the fact that they're both ghost types. I think this makes a lot more intuitive sense. I think it gives most new players a little bit of an easier time, like, learning what all the moves do. Because it is kind of confusing that a move like Shadow Ball in Gen 3 is a physical move, because it doesn't look like it would be. Though, I guess when you understand the rules, it's really not that difficult to learn, and Pokemon has to learn so much. A Pokemon player has to learn so much as it is, so, I mean, what difference does it really make, whether you have to learn the individual moves or the type rules? I digress. Let's talk about some of the winners here of the physical special split. These are not the only ones, but these are some of the biggest ones by my estimation. Tyranitar is a rock dark type Pokemon, so it had mixed stab in Gen 3. In fact, we're going to see a lot of Pokemon that were mixed stab that are basically considered winners in this. The thing about Tyranitar, though, is it has pretty lopsided offenses. 134 physical attack, which is really high, and 95 special attack, which is about average, maybe borderline mediocre for an offensive Pokemon. So using Stab, Crunch, and Pursuit, which are like 2 huge moves for Tyranitar in both generations, using your weaker special side does mean that you're doing considerably less damage than if you were able to use your physical side. In Gen 4, you don't have to worry about that conundrum anymore. The choice is made for you. Crunch and Pursuit are coming off of your massive base 134. Similarly, Dragonite is able to use its Dragon Stab off of its base 134 attack stat. So Dragon Claw, and we'll talk about Outrage. Outrage becomes a different beast in this generation. It does exist in Gen 3. You might wonder, well, why doesn't anybody use it? Well, we'll talk about it. Like, yeah, Dragonite hits the freaking lottery here, basically. It's also kind of nice. The elemental punches, particularly like Fire Punch, is now accessible to Dragonite from its much better physical side. Now, granted, that does mean that you're not really... I mean, okay, you can kind of still use Fire Blast, right? The thing in Gen 3 is you wouldn't use Fire Punch because you have Fire Blast. But if you really want a special Dragonite in Gen 4, you could still use Fire Blast. So there's no real, like, difference in that way. But if you want fire coverage to hit on the physical side, say like you're worried about a Spadef Jirachi, or like I don't know, another steel or grass type that has significantly weaker phys def. I don't know, like Celebi, if that's speed def. Yeah, you could hit that for pretty considerable damage. Gyarados, another Pokemon where it basically has a completely inaccessible stab in water in Gen 3 that becomes completely usable in Gen 4 thanks to there being some physical water type moves, namely Waterfall, accessible to it. There are other things that go in Gyarados' favor as well, like additional moves that it gets, like Stone Edge, but we'll talk a little bit more about that later. There are some losers. Now, I'll be honest, some of these are a little bit stretching because I will say, I think the physical special split, for the most part, benefited pretty much all Pokemon, at least in terms of their competitive viability, or at least on the offensive side. Maybe you could argue that defensively some Pokemon are worse, but that's a little bit more of a complicated argument to make. I do think one pretty notable loser in the physical special split is Houndoom. Houndoom really liked having Crunch and Pursuit, especially Pursuit, as a special move in ADV, using its higher base 110 special attack rather than its lower, I think, base 90 attack? Don't quote me on that. I think it's somewhere around there. So, yeah, now Houndoom is not quite as good a Pursuit Trapper as it once was in ADV, which may explain why it dropped down to UU out of UUBL, or probably other factors explain that as well. I will say, though, that you do get access to a move like Dark Pulse to replace Crunch in your arsenal, but yeah, once again, I'd be remiss not to mention that you are losing out on Pursuit, which would have been really nice for Houndoom as an option. Fortress kind of loses here, in the sense that it no longer has access to its best stab option, at least on its bug side, in Hidden Power Bug, because now all Hidden Power types are considered special in Gen 4, which is kind of a crazy nerf to physical attackers. So that kind of sucks. Now, Fortress is going to more than make up for it with the additional moves that it gets. So is it really losing that much? I don't think so. In fact, I would probably argue that Fortress is even better in DPP than it is in ADV, but we'll table that discussion for another time. And then Dusclops, which you could maybe even extend to its evolution in Gen 4, Dusknoir, loses out on Shadow Ball, which would have been its strongest stab option. Now, Dusclops doesn't have particularly high offenses either way, but it does like being a physical ghost type, and Dusknoir even more so. And now that they have to rely on a slightly weaker Shadow Punch as stab, that kind of sucks. But they do get some other things that help them out, like, for example, access to the elemental punches as physical moves. So it's not like completely lost for them, but yes, physical Shadow Ball would have been nice for them. More broadly speaking, you could say that fighting and flying types are losing here because of the change to hidden power. Fighting types really liked having physical hidden powers in like Bug or Ghost in order to hit Psychic and Ghost types. But at the same time, they get access to some nice dark type moves, namely one that we'll talk about in particular, that kind of make up for it. So it's not the end of the world for them, but, you know, losing like Hidden Power Bug to be able to hit something like Celebi, if you wanted your fighting type to be like specifically a Celebi lure, that's not really a thing you can do in DPP quite the same as you could in ADV. And then flying types also kind of get boned, particularly ones that don't get access to a new flying type move, which is really, really powerful, which, again, we will be talking about. They will just have to be accepting that they don't have a flying stab, like, at all, because hidden power flying was your most consistent, widely available option in ADV. Don't have that anymore. There's some give and take. I mean, granted, you could argue that there's give and take with all of these Pokemon. Maybe a little bit more give than take for some of them, but there are some fundamental differences for certain Pokemon. Gengar, you would think, would just be a winner in this exchange, right? It is a weird Pokemon in ADV that does not have access really to either of its stabs because of how physical and special works there. Ghost and Poison are both physical attacking types, which are using Gengar's much, much worse Space 65 attack rather than its like superior base 130 special attack. But you do lose access to some of your coverage moves in the transition to Gen 4. Gengar was a Pokemon that really appreciated the elemental punches, namely Ice Punch and Fire Punch, to hit certain Pokemon for extra damage. Like, for example, Fire Punch being an Oko on Fortress is really, really nice. You don't really have a move that Oko's Fortress quite the same way in DPP. And Fortress has an option now where it doesn't really need to rely on Pursuit Trappers to beat Gengar. Also, the fact that Pursuit is a physical move hitting Gengar on its weaker Phys Def side, and that many of the Pursuit Trappers have extremely high attack stats. Not just Tyranitar. Think about Pokemon like Metagross and Scizor having Pursuit. That really sucks for Gengar. It has a lot more Pursuiters to worry about, in part because of the physical special split. So I would say, like, you know, it's probably worth losing Fire Punch and Ice Punch as reasonable coverage in favor of getting access to Stab Shadow Ball, which is ginormous for Gengar. Yes, you also have Stab Sludge Bomb, but Poison is a pretty suspect coverage type. It doesn't really hit many things very well. But yeah, we'll also talk about some of the additions to Gengar's moveset, as well as Alakazam's moveset and many other special attackers' movesets on the next slide, because there's an elephant in the room. We'll address it. Trust me. I'm spending more time on this slide telling you that I'm going to tell you more stuff than just getting through the slide, huh? Well, Alakazam, similar boat to Gengar, where Pursuit being more prevalent because of it being a physical attack now kind of sucks for it. But, and you also losing the elemental punches, but, I mean, it does get access to some coverage options that it would not otherwise have, which, once again, we'll talk about it. All right, it's Focus Blast, all right? You already know, but shush, we'll talk about it. Jirachi, once again, another Pokemon that is losing out on elemental punches as coverage options, which does make it not quite as nice in terms of being a Calm Minesweeper. You know, Ice Punch and Fire Punch were really, really nice coverage for hitting certain things that Jirachi now has to get a little bit more creative to deal with. But the fact that all hidden power types are special in this game does help Jirachi out. Like, for example, it could run Hidden Power Ground on a Calm Mindset to hit the steel types, in particular Heatran, who would not be affected very much by a Hidden Power Fire. So that's pretty nice. But it also does mean that the elemental punches, if you want to use them, like Fire Punch, for example, you could use that on your physically oriented Jirachi sets. physically oriented Jirachi is not that common in ADV because Jirachi does not get good physical moves, really, like other than Body Slam. But it gets a lot better physical moves, in part because it's got access to those elemental punches for its physical side. So physical Jirachi is super duper real in DPP. So that could be a good thing for Jirachi. And then Muck is here because he's a funny guy. Well, he loses the elemental punches, but he does get... he also loses Sludge Bomb as a stab move, which kind of sucks. But he does get to take advantage of some pretty good new moves that are now physical because of the physical special split, like Shadow Sneak, like... well, I mean, Poison Jab and Gunk Shot were always going to be physical regardless, but it's just something for him. But he's mostly there because he's a cool guy. Let's go on to talk more specifically about move additions. So, you know, some options definitely change, like your elemental punches being physical now, hidden power all being special now, your common ghost and dark type moves kind of flipping their allegiance, you know, Shadow Ball now being special, Crunch, Pursuit now being physical, etc., etc. That does change a lot, but there are some new moves that are going to fundamentally alter the experience, and I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about what I think the top 5 are, and then we'll list some honorable mentions as well. The number 1, I mean, this is duh, is Stealth Rocks. So, Stealth Rock is a hazard similar to Spikes. It will deal damage to a Pokemon that switches in. However, it's not stackable like Spikes is. So you might think, okay, well, that's not really like that crazy. Like, yes, it probably synergizes very well with Spikes, and it does. Don't get it twisted. But you're not going to be able to like stack up and win super duper hard with Stealth Rock, are you? Well, Stealth Rock has slightly different mechanics than Spikes. Instead of doing a fixed like 1/8 that increases the number of layers that you stack, it does a fixed 1/8, and then that gets multiplied by type effectiveness to rock. So, for example, if like Snorlax comes in on it, it's going to take an 1/8 because rock is neutral into Snorlax. But if a fire type, like let's say Typhlosion, comes in on it, double that. It's taking a 1/4. So Typhlosion, by virtue of being weak to rock type, is taking effectively 3 layers of Spikes worth of damage, which is really big because you only have to spend 1 turn to get those rocks up. You might see where this is going. If you are 4 times weak to rock, like say for example Moltres, who is fire and flying type, you are now taking 50% for switching in. Half of your entire health just for switching in. And that means that these rock weak Pokemon, particularly like flying types who were really, really good defensively in ADV, are now like defensive liabilities in a sense. Like take this Chatot, for example. Let's say the rocks were already up. Chatot would come in and take 25% and might have to get hit by another move. Like if this Hippowdon, say, goes for a Rock Slide, that means that Chatot's probably dead. Like Chatot was probably barely living the Rock Slide anyway, but because it took 25% chip just to come in, that means it can't really like switch in at all. Now, I mean, flying types still have good defensive utility in that they're immune to Earthquake, in that they're immune to Spikes, but Stealth Rocks is a huge, huge nerf to them, and then Bug, Ice, and Fire get hit with major collateral damage because of that. So that kind of sucks, but it does mean that Pokemon that are like resistant to rock get a little bit better. Hippowdon, for example, because it resists rock, instead of taking an 1/8, it would take a 16th of its health. And then a Pokemon that times 4 resists rock, like let's say Lucario, would only take, what is it, like basically like 3% damage. Hardly anything. Half of your leftovers healing in Chip, which is, yeah, pretty negligible. Although matters to greater or lesser extents depending on what your item is. Toxic Spikes, another hazard here, is similar to Spikes in that any grounded Pokemon, i.e. not Levitate, not Flying type, will get affected by it. Instead of dealing direct damage, though, it poisons the target. Additionally, if you set a second layer of Toxic Spikes, it will badly poison the target. This is a huge move for stall teams, since you can spend 2 turns to effectively get toxic on the entire team. You don't have to worry about missing the toxics. You can kind of just keep clicking recovery moves as your opponent is switching around, trying not to die to the mounting up toxic damage and getting other of their Pokemon toxic. Now, there's a little bit of counterplay. If you have a poison type that is affected by toxics, or I should say spikes, a grounded poison type, like Victory Bell here, for example, if that switches in, it removes the toxic spikes automatically. So you do have to be a little bit careful about just going for spikes willy-nilly against a team that might have a poison type, though similar to ADV, poison types are kind of mediocre in Gen 4. They're a little bit better, don't get me wrong, especially because of toxic spikes, but they're one of the less represented types in competitive, so it's not super duper difficult to maintain like the spikes versus many teams. Roost. So Roost is a pretty straightforward move. It's similar to Recover in that it heals 50% of your HP, but pretty much every flying type gets it, which means that pretty much every flying type is capable of being a really, really longevitous Pokemon if you can manage to keep the Stealth Rocks away. So this is kind of the trade-off, I guess, for being weak to Stealth Rock as a flying type. Now, don't ask what Fire and Ice and Bug get as compensation for it, but yeah, Roost is quite nice. Another side effect of Roost is that on the turn that you use it, you lose your flying type. So what this means is that, say this Pidgeot goes for Roost versus this Mankey here, and Pidgeot's faster, of course, because it's really, it's like 3 times the level of the Mankey. It is going to act as if it is a normal type, mono-normal, because it loses its flying type, which means that if Mankey goes for a fighting type move here, it will deal super effective damage. Now, in this case, the Mankey's level 17, so, like, whatever, who cares? But that can matter in some cases. A big interaction where this comes up, Skarmory using Roost is now affected by Earthquake, and if you have a really, really strong Earthquake from a Pokemon that's slower than Skarmory, you can outpace their Roost healing, which can be kind of diabolical. Also, let's just acknowledge for a moment here that they gave Skarmory a move that heals at 50%. Could you imagine if it got Recover in ADV? That thing would be so busted. We also have U-Turn. So U-Turn is functioning kind of similarly to Baton Pass in ADV, except it deals damage. A Bug-type move, 70 base power, hits the opponent, and then causes you to switch out. Why this is big over Baton Pass? Well, for one, Baton Pass is quite limited in its availability on certain Pokemon, as well as its legality in certain formats. I don't recall if in DPP Ubers you are allowed to Baton Pass. I think you are, but I don't think you're allowed to stat pass. So it's maybe not quite as big a deal here, but it is a big deal for the Pokemon that get it, which is a lot of flying types, which is a good number of other like floating type Pokemon, like Jirachi and Celebi, for example. I know that they're not technically like floaters in that they're immune to ground, but this is huge. It gives a lot of momentum for offense teams. It also gives defensive teams like really, really easy ways to soak damage on walls and then get a slow pivot out. There's so much you can do with this. And then the fact that it is a bug type 70 base power move, which is something that people would run in ADV and sacrifice their entire hidden power type for, is just massive. Really, really good move, and probably arguably more impactful than like Toxic Spikes and Roost. Probably not arguably more than Stealth Rock. Maybe you could make that argument, but definitely one of the top 5 for sure. And then the last move that I have here is Focus Blast. There are a lot of really, really strong attack moves that were added to this. We could have talked about Draco Meteor, which I don't know if I put it in the honorable mentions now that I'm thinking about it, but it definitely is one of those. But Focus Blast is massive coverage for special attackers. Fighting is a pretty good coverage type because it hits a lot of really good Pokemon, namely Steels and Tyranitar. And a lot of the Pokemon that really, really do not like to handle Tyranitar, especially with its really powerful pursuit in this generation, like Gengar and Alakazam, would just fold to it otherwise. But now they have this Focus Blast here, a 120 base power move to hit on the ×4 super effective into the Tyranitar. So you're quite likely to just straight up kill the Tyranitar for that. As crazy as this sounds to ADVers, it's not a guaranteed kill on all Tyranitar. Tyranitar has ways to survive Focus Blast, which that's insane, I know. But trust me when I say Gen 4 mechanics are a whole nother beast. Now, the thing that sucks about Focus Blast is that it's only 70% accurate, and you can't boost its accuracy with, like, on-the-field effects like you can with a move like Thunder. But needless to say, a lot of Pokemon still use this. It does make the dynamic between certain Pokemon like Tyranitar versus Alakazam / Gengar a little bit more one-dimensional, which kind of sucks. But I mean, competitively speaking, for the viability of those Pokemon, it's inarguably really, really good. And then honorable mentions here. I forgot to put Draco Meteor, but that is a move that definitely is an honorable mention. We'll talk more about it on a later slide for sure, though. Close Combat is similar to Focus Blast in that it is a 120 base power fighting type move, but it is a physical fighting type move. And the trade-off for it is that you lower your defense and special defense by 1 stage every time you click it. That is really not that bad a trade-off because a lot of Glass Cannon type Pokemon that weren't taking hits anyway don't care about their defense stats. So you might as well click it. And Close Combat is a staple move for generations to come. It is still one of the best moves in the game in Gen 9 even. Yeah, fantastic move. Brave Bird is huge for flying types, especially now that they have lost access to hidden power flying. If they want a physical flying type move to use, you get now a 120 base power move to click. The trade-off is that you take recoil damage, similar to like Double Edge, but once again, that's fine. Skarmory even uses it in DPP because you really, really like having that extra damage, and it's not that hard to heal it off. It actually synergizes very well with Roost, since Roost is very easy to slap on a set and recover your HP with. Payback. All right, Payback is a kind of interesting move. If you're familiar with Revenge in ADV, it works similarly to that, where if you are acting second on a turn, you will get double damage. So this becomes from a 50 base power dark type move to a 100 base power dark type move, effectively speaking. I don't think it's literally exactly like that in the calc. I think it doubles the damage, which is technically slightly better than doubling the base power. Which, okay, actually, now that I'm saying that, I'm not sure if that's how it works. Somebody correct me in the comments. Does it double your damage or double your base power? Either way, that's really, really strong. And there are a lot of Pokemon that can make really effective use of Payback, like, for example, a slow Tyranitar, or Fortress, and that lets Fortress be actually pretty self-sufficient against spin blockers. Now, not completely so, because Will-O-Wisp is still a bastard move, so you have to kind of contend with that, but there are things you could do, like run a Lumberry, in order to not completely suck into such things as a Will-O-Wisp and Gengar. But yeah, Payback is huge. It's really huge in the Ubers tier, which we will be talking about as well. And then there's a ton of new priority moves in this generation. Aqua Jet, Ice Shard, Bullet Punch, Shadow Sneak, Sucker Punch, and Vacuum Wave. ADV does not have these. ADV has Quick Attack and Extreme Speed, but the only Pokemon that gets Extreme Speed is like Lanoon. So, and I think Arcanine, both of which are kind of niche. Believe it or not, Lanoon's probably better than Arcanine. If you're coming at this as not an ADVer, that might sound a little crazy, but it's true. Yeah, so that makes the sort of interplay between like speed tiers a little bit more complicated. It also means that it's harder to save low health Pokemon for the sake of getting value later in a game. In ADV, a 10% Aerodactyl is really, really valuable, because you don't really need Aerodactyl to take hits. You just need Aerodactyl to come in, outspeed everything, and do massive damage. In Gen 4, that's not quite as true, because many teams could have a priority user that will pick off the Aerodactyl anyway. So maybe you are not as inclined to spend resources to save your really, really low health Aerodactyl in that sense. Now, sometimes you might be. I'm not going to say that you should always just sack everything, but it's a little bit less upside for doing so, depending on what your opponent's packing on their team and their sets. But now we're going to talk about ADV Ubers a little bit. Yes, I know we're belaboring the point. We're meandering to get to where we're supposed to be, but that's a Tetrafolium video for you, all right? I need to pad the runtime so that you don't have to switch the video while you're at work, all right? Appreciate the value in that. I'm so accusatory of you as the viewer. Like, at this point, if you're still watching, you're probably fine with all the conceit of all of this. So let's stop wasting time. ADV Ubers is unsurprisingly dominated by Kyogre and Groudon, but maybe a little bit more surprisingly to those of you who are not as familiar with it, Latios and Latias. So they're all really, really good. And the reason why Latios and Latias are really, really good is the item Soul Dew. Soul Dew in ADV as well as in DPP gives your Latios and your Latias +1 attack, or sorry, special attack and special defense for free. Well, I mean, at the cost of your item slot. But that is insanely good. And in fact, I'm even lying there. It doesn't give you +1. It just gives you a 1.5 times multiplier. So you can stack boosts on top of that with Calm Mind. This means that these Pokemon are really, really good at switching into special hits, as well as really, really good at Calm Minding up and sweeping through teams. And they're pretty fast at a base 110, especially for ADV. It is really hard to come by Pokemon that outspeed these two. And then there's also not very strong stab or priority moves, I should say, in ADV. Your best bet is Extreme Speed Rayquaza. You don't have Shadow Sneak. You don't have Sucker Punch. You don't have like anything really for dealing with these Pokemon when they get out of control. There's also not Choice Scarf in ADV, but we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So, yeah, arguably Latios and Latias are the two best in the tier. I think probably many would say Kyogre is the best, but there's a decent argument for all four of these as being one of the best in ADV Ubers, and this is probably the consensus top 4 here. The next tier of Pokemon are essentially the Pokemon whose inherent bulk and access to recovery or utility moves will allow them to survive encounters with these Pokemon or like slow them down in some meaningful way. So in some order, this is like your next tier of Pokemon in ADV. I know that literally 4 of these Pokemon are not Uber ranked, but Blissey and Snorlax have massive niches as special walls in this tier. Snorlax is once again a little bit more offensively oriented in its special walling, and access to Explosion to remove one of the major threats of your opponent's team is a big deal. Curse is also still a really nice move for Snorlax that can allow it to function as a sweeper into teams that are relying mostly on special attackers that are not able to like effectively break through the Snorlax. Though that being said, it's not that crazy to have a special attacker that could break through Snorlax. Kyogre has a 150 base special attack stat after all. So it's not like literally living all. It's not the immortal one. Blissey, a little bit closer to that. Really, really good at walling the Latios and Latias duo. It's also nice into Kyogre. Of course, having massive special defense, huge HP, and access to soft boiled is all really, really good. So can't really go wrong with that. Really good at spreading Thunder Waves and Toxics as well. Forretress is the spiker of choice in DPP, in DPP and ADV Ubers. Skarmory is still usable in both, don't get it twisted, but Forretress does have really, really nice access to Rapid Spin to deal with opposing Forretress, and Explosion to hopefully trade into something, which is definitely worth it. Skipping over the featured Mon here, because we don't talk about the featured Mon in a Tetrafolium video. Jirachi, that's my guy right there. Really, really good at walling the Lotties, because it resists both Dragon and Psychic. It has Wish, it has Body Slam, allowing it to triple the Groudon that might switch into it. You could still run Thunder Wave, of course, but Body Slam is really, really nice, particularly in ADV. And yeah, I mean, it's just a solid utility special wall, like an auxiliary special wall for defensive-oriented teams. But speaking of defensive-oriented teams, in ADV, Ho-Oh and Lugia are like the poster children for those. Ho-Oh, we're going to talk about in more detail later, but has massive special defense and ways to punish physical attackers that are switching in. Lugia has also massive special defense, is not times 4 a week to rock, which means that it's harder for physical attackers to find Oko opportunities on Lugia. And Lugia has just evil synergies with its moves. I mean, Ho-Oh similarly does access to phasing, recover, and the ability to pressure all in one is just diabolical. But Lugia is fantastic at stalling with Toxic. The no attack Lugia set is just evil. It's just evil. These are not the only Pokemon that are considered like high tier. There are these ones that have really cracked offenses. Deoxys Attack with its base 180 in both attack and special attack, as well as being one of the fastest Pokemon in the tier at base 150, is diabolical. It can really sweep through a lot of teams, especially ones that are weakened. It fits on a lot of structures, from hyper offense to like semi-stall. Really good. And then Mewtwo also has really high special attack, but it's not a total slouch on the physical side either, and has access to self-destruct to trade into things. So it's a very potent Pokemon as well. There's certainly a lot of other Pokemon that are usable in the ADV Ubers tier, and maybe we will cover that some other day, but this video is already going to get long enough as it is. So stay tuned for more ADV Ubers content potentially in the future. We'll see. So that being said, though, does defense, like as a concept and a stat, kind of fall off in Gen 4? Well, there are a lot of changes that really benefit offense. As one of the things, massive offensive stats are getting more ubiquitous in DPP, especially on the special side. Here are all of your really high stat Pokemon that are available in ADV. Of course, you've got a lot of really good special attackers in DOA, Mewtwo, Kyogre, and Rayquaza. You also have some good physical attackers in DOA, Rayquaza, who it's crazy that they're on both sides, but Groudon as well. But as for Pokemon that have 150 base or higher, there are 2 new additions in Gen 4, in Palkia and Dialga, who both have base 150 special attack. There are some other Pokemon that are getting close to that, like, for example, Darkrai has base 135. It's pretty strong. The Lotties, I have not mentioned them, but they're effectively even higher than base 150 in their special attacks, thanks to the Soul Dew being completely busted. But there are some other things, not just Pokemon and stats, that are really helping out offense. There's the Choice Specs, which is a choice band for special attackers. There's the Choice Scarf, which is similar to the other choice items in that you're locked into your move, but it boosts your speed by 1.5 times. That's actually more, honestly, an anti-offense tool. It means that slower Pokemon, like, say, your base 90 Dialga or your base 95 Rayquaza, are able to outspeed the really fast Pokemon in the tier, like your Mewtwo, like your DOA. But it does help against defensive Pokemon as well. It means that sometimes like your Ho-Oh with some speed investment is just getting outsped, doesn't matter, you're boned. It means like a Pokemon like Jirachi, for example, even if it invests in speed, it might get outsped by something that is slower, like a Groudon or a Kyogre that chooses to run Choice Scarf. I don't think that Choice Scarf Groudon is all that common, TBH, but Kyogre definitely is. Another item that I don't think I have on the slide is Life Orb. It's kind of like a happy mid-ground for a lot of these attackers. It boosts your damage output by 1.3 times, but you'll take 10% of your damage and recoil on every move that you use. Well, every attacking move that you use. That does mean that you're doing quite a bit more damage, but it does decrease your longevity a little bit. But as we may find out, this pace of DPP Ubers certainly can accommodate that. These games go by pretty quick. There are some moves that are ridiculous, especially in the Ubers tier. Outrage is a move that exists in ADV. You don't see it being used. Why is that? Well, in ADV, it's 90 base power and a special attack just like Dragon Claw is. So Dragon Claw, 5 less base power, but it does not have the downside of locking you in for 2 to 3 turns and confusing you thereafter. In Gen 4, it's a physical move and it's 120 base power. That huge jump in base power makes it extremely usable, and the dearth of dragon resists in DPP Ubers makes it really, really difficult to switch into Outrage. In fact, a lot of times you can confirm kills by switching into a fast Outrage user. Like Scarf in conjunction with Outrage, demonic. You see Gabite using it there. Garchomp is a really, really prominent user of that strategy and can be a big pain in the rear if you don't have something like a Bronzong to switch into it. Draco Meteor, another dragon type move, 140 base power. The trade-off is you will lose 2 stages of special attack every time you use it, so it's similar to Overheat in that way. But Dragon, but once again, very difficult type to switch into. So having a massive button to click like that is, once again, demonic. And then I would be remiss not to mention Stealth Rocks once again here. Flying types had a lot of longevity in ADV because of the spike immunity. Now, not so much. Yeah, Lugia and Ho-Oh, or in particular Ho-Oh, are not just going to be able to stick around all game and spam their recover and bleed a opponent out of all their resources but on like turn 150. Like you can set up to do in ADV if you want to play such a team, because if your opponent gets Stealth Rocks up on you, yeah, I mean you're only going to be able to switch in but so many times, and then in conjunction with these really, really powerful moves like Outrage and Draco Meteor, pretty likely to pick up the 1 or 2 hit KO after you're taking all that chip. So how does this affect Ho-Oh? We're 50 minutes in and we're finally talking about the featured mon. Well, here's the stat spread for Ho-Oh. Really high attack. That's the same attack stat as Breloom and Machamp. Only 4 points lower than Tyranitar. And you have over 100 HP, which is massive. And you have a functional special attack stat, and you have phenomenal special defense. And then your defense and speed are both definitely workable. This is a really, really good Pokemon, at least on paper with its stats. And then it's got access to the signature move, Sacred Fire, 8 PP. I think it's 100 base power in both ADV and DPP, and 95 accuracy. So a pretty strong move, a little bit weaker than Fire Blast, but more accurate. But it has a 50% chance to burn if it lands. That is devastating for a lot of Pokemon. Like, you could switch into something that takes Sacred Fire decently well, like a Kyogre, like a Latios or Latias, and they could get burned, which means that they are now like on a timer. They're not going to be as effective at walling in the short term against like a Ho-Oh. And that synergizes really, really well with Ho-Oh's defensive capabilities. So in ADV, you can leverage your incredible special defense, which is only outdone by Deoxys Defense, who has 160, and matched by Lugia. And okay, well, technically, Shuckle has more special defense as well, but like its HP is so low that you like it doesn't matter. It's it's dying to a lot of moves way faster than Ho-Oh would. It means that you can be a really, really outstanding special wall. And in addition to that, flying lets you ignore spikes, so you can stay around for a really long time. You have 32 PP on recover, which is... I don't even know what they were thinking when they gave this Pokemon recover, like, and pressure. It means that it is like the god PP staller. The only Pokemon that arguably stalls PP better than Ho-Oh is Lugia, but you know, they work really well together. If you're really trying to accomplish the goal of stalling out all of your opponent's PP. And then the Sacred Fire 50% chance to burn means that Ho-Oh is pretty much 50% likely to become the best mix wall in the game. Maybe arguably not, because you're ×4 weak to rock, so anything that's packing Rock Slide or HP Rock still hits you pretty hard. But like, in lieu of that, Ho-Oh is really, really difficult to kill in ADV. So yeah, no wonder it's one of the best Pokemon in the format. Maybe not top 4, but probably top 10. Now let's look at the DPP version. So Ho-Oh like loses a lot from the defensive side. 50% damage dealt by Stealth Rocks on switch-in sucks. Losing half of your recover PP means that you're not nearly as effective as a PP staller either. Although, frankly, I mean, with Stealth Rocks chipping you that much and the pace of the DPP metagame, it was pretty rare that you were going to get to use all 32 recover PP anyway. But it does mean that you are not going to be able to go on forever quite the same as you can in ADV. There are more dragon types which resist Sacred Fire, and a lot of them are special attackers like Dialga, who I guess technically doesn't resist Sacred Fire, Palkia, who super resists Sacred Fire, and Giratina. All of these Pokemon, you know, are more specially oriented, or at least tend to be. Giratina maybe is a little bit of a toss-up. And Dialga definitely does have physical sets, but all of them do like to run Draco Meteor and can run other special attacks as well, and can invest very highly in them. So it's not the worst case in the world if they get burned, and to switch into a big resist like that can be a big deal. Choice specs means that the special attackers are hitting harder, so your special defense is not quite as indomitable by comparison. And then Draco Meteor and Outrage being ridiculously powerful moves is just like, come on, man. Ho-Oh does get some nice offensive tools as compensation for these hits to its defense, though. Sacred Fire is now a physical attack, which means that you get to use your higher base 130 Fizz attack instead of the slightly lower 110 special attack, which effectively means you're going to do about 15% more damage. Not like 15 percentage points to the opponent necessarily, but like in terms of the relative increase. Let's not get too deep in the math, though. I'm going to lose both of you who are still watching at this stage. Brave Bird is an option, which we kind of mentioned before, and Ho-Oh gets it. And because you have a really, really nice physical attack stat, as we mentioned before, you make a lot of use out of it. And having a really high HP stat as well means that the recoil is not as relatively terrible for you as it would be if you were a really low HP Pokemon. So does that mean that Ho-Oh is going to be a more offensively inclined creature in the transition from ADV to DPP? Well, let's see what the moveset differences are. So in ADV, this is what Ho-Oh does according to the Smogon Dex entries. There's this Calm Mind set, which uses Sacred Fire and Electric coverage, either Thunder or Thunderbolt, which can be a pretty potent sweeper in some contexts. I will say the limited ADV Ubers that I have played, I have not seen this Pokemon in action. I can understand what it does on paper, but I'm not entirely convinced this is the best way to use Ho-Oh. Maybe somebody who has more ball knowledge can tell me that I'm wrong and stupid. But this does seem like a cool set. And Calm Mind with your ridiculous special defense and your more than serviceable special attack is, I mean, can't complain about that. Remember, Ho-Oh has more special attack than Charizard does. And it has a move that doesn't miss nearly as often as Fire Blast does at its disposal. So, Ho-Oh is, I mean, it's a pretty strong guy. Choice Band is an option for you. You'll still run Sacred Fire, of course, because getting the burn on opposing switch-ins can still be really, really nice. But you can leverage Shadow Ball, Earthquake, and Hidden Power, Rock, or Flying to deal big damage to Pokemon that are weak to those. So Shadow Ball to hit the Lotties. Remember, in ADV, Shadow Ball is a physical move. Earthquake to hit things like Metagross and Jirachi, which are pretty common in the tier. And then HP Flying for Stab, or HP Rock if you want to hit opposing Ho-Oh. You could hit Lugia with it as well, although Shadow Ball would do a little bit more. Also a pretty solid option, but this is this Ho-Oh set that I'm a little bit more familiar with. This is from a sample team called Sunstall by Ish Makil, or Ismakil. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. Where this is like more what I would expect Ho-Oh to do, leveraging its really, really high defensive stats to be like a sort of recover stally kind of Pokemon. Shadow Ball there to hit things like Latios. Latios does like to run Refresh in ADV Ubers, so Toxic is not an OHKO on it. It also gives you more room to like hold on to your Sacred Fires, since you don't need to get a burn on every defensive Pokemon in order to make progress against them. So that makes a good deal of sense there. But let's take a look at DPP. Bulky Attacker. So this is definitely a more attack-invested variant of what you might see on like the ADV side. Using Brave Bird, Sacred Fire, Roost, and either Substitute or Earthquake. Substitute, really nice, once again, because you have that 101 HP sub at your disposal, meaning that Blissey cannot break it with one Seismic Toss. And in conjunction with a recovery move, in this case, it looks like Roost, but low-key, I think Recover might be better. There's some give and take on that, and there's definitely arguments either way. But yeah, this makes a lot of sense. It works really well to Ho-Oh's strengths, and I really like this set. But there's also a Choice Band set in DPP, and this one's arguably more potent because of the access to Stab Bravebird. As the last move, you have Sleep Talk there because Darkrai is pretty common and likes to throw around Dark Voids all the time. So being able to Sleep Talk and then smoke the Darkrai with pretty much any of these moves is really, really good. You're very likely to live any sort of like Dark Pulse from them as well because you have really high natural special defense. And then I want to note as well that Sleep Talk mechanics are different in DPP. They work how like you would maybe expect them to work, especially in a modern generation, where, I mean, as long as you're asleep, you can roll the moves. Choice Band doesn't interact weirdly with it like it does in ADV, where you're not allowed to click Sleep Talk again, or like it fails. I don't recall, but I know that like Sleep Talk on Choice Band sets are very, very niche because they don't let you continually click it in ADV, so that kind of sucks. Additionally, if you click Sleep Talk in DPP, you still burn the turn of sleep if you switch out. In ADV, every turn consecutively that you click Sleep Talk before you switch out does not count as burned turns of sleep. So Ho-Oh in DPP could use Sleep Talk after it gets put to sleep by Dark Void, switch out, and then it will still have its turn of sleep burned. So that's really, really good. Now, let's get into what I decided I wanted to do with DPP Ho-Oh. And it's pretty similar to the bulky attacker. The EVs are close, but not quite the same. And the moves are almost exactly the same, except I tend to prefer Recover. Reason why is I think that like Slow Earthquake like still kind of exists. So not giving that as an option to the opponent seems really nice to me. There's the argument that's like, well, like a slow rock move punishes you if you don't have Roost rather than Recover. And I can see that argument. I can also see the argument that Recover plus Imprison is maybe more common than Imprison plus Roost. But like, I think that overall it's maybe a marginal difference and maybe a matter of taste, but still really, really fine either way. I just tend to prefer Recover. Brave Bird, with this amount of attack, a little bit lower than the previous set that we looked at, still gets the 2-hit KO on 252 Kyogre through its leftovers, which is really nice. You'll 2-hit KO opposing bulky standard or standard bulky attacker Ho-Oh, and if they're running the standard spread, we're outspeeding them by literally 1 point of speed, so that's really nice. We're going to 2-hit KO Blissey if we're in the sand, and 80% of the time outside of the sand. Now, be careful about clicking too many Brave Birds into Blissey, because you're taking the recoil damage, and because Blissey has a lot of HP, you're going to take a lot of recoil damage. Now, Ho-Oh can still kind of afford to do this, because it has Recover, and it has a large HP pool of its own to leech from, but just keep that in mind. And then we 3-hit KO the Sleeping Beauty, i.e. the Rest Talk Giratina Origin, which is a really, really devastating set for a lot of stall teams, or like fat teams, I guess, because DPP Ubers' stall looks quite different than what you would expect. So that's good. We can kill it before it wakes up, depending on how we sequence it, which can be nice. Sacred Fire is going to do over 80% to Bronzong and Jirachi, and if the Jirachi is not like us, bulky Jirachi, like with 252 HP, we could just straight up kill it. We'll 2-hit KO all Groudon if we burn them, and we will certainly 2-hit KO all the Groudon that are not running HP investment, even if we don't burn them. And that's in part thanks to Groudon setting the sun for us to give us even more powerful Sacred Fires. So that's really nice. And then we only die 50% of the time to Wobbuffet counter. If we get the lower half of our rolls, we will survive the counter, which can sometimes matter. If Wobbuffet rips the counter right away on you, and you low roll and get the burn, then you can recover spam, and Wobbuffet can't really do much about it. So that's an option, I guess. The defensive investment, we get 101 HP subs. We want to be 1 point higher than 404, though. For Ho-Oh, it's a huge deal to not have an even number of HP, because Stealth Rocks does half of our health, rounded down. So if we have an even number of HP, we will die to 2 switch-ins of Stealth Rocks. If we have an odd number, though, we can switch in twice and still have 1 HP remaining, which sometimes matters. So be conscious about that for Ho-Oh. We can sub versus a no investment Dragon Claw from Groudon. Dragon Claw is a very common coverage move for Groudon because there are so many dragon types in the tier. No attack investment Groudon is sometimes pretty common as a sort of like special wall, at least for like the short term, to get the rocks up, to get Thunder Waves off, and the like. So we kind of own that set with Ho-Oh. And then we will live 15 out of 16 rolls on our substitute versus a utility Tyranitar payback if we burn it with Sacred Fire. And note that utility Tyranitar does not very commonly run a rock type move. It's usually running payback, pursuit, and then Fire Blast. Sometimes it could replace one of those moves for superpower, but not very commonly is it running Stone Edge or Rock Slide. So that's good to know. That being said, DD Tyranitar still exists, and that runs Stone Edge quite often. So, yeah, we're not beating every Tyranitar. We outspeed Tyranitar by 2, which is a huge speed tier still in DPP Ubers, which is kind of crazy. So nothing has really changed from ADV OU, right? Even though we literally just talked about all the things that changed. But another thing to note is that a lot of Pokemon run 244. Like, for example, the previous Ho-Oh set. It's got, you see that 112 speed, 116. We're faster than that. We're faster than Jirachi as well, unless it's like Scarf or like max speed Cheezer with T-Wave plus Iron Head. Yeah, a lot of other Pokemon that are in like the mid speed tiers, like 90, like Giratina, sometimes Groudon, sometimes Kyogre will be running like 244. So this is a good speed tier to kind of hang out at. You could go faster, but then like you're either pulling from your attack, which kind of sucks, because we're like literally right on the threshold of 2-hit KOs versus a lot of somewhat common sets. Or you could pull from your defense, but that kind of also sucks because then it's a little bit more difficult to keep your sub up versus certain things. But here's our team structure. This is Ho-Oh TSS, which is about as close to an ADV team as we're going to get in DPP Ubers. You're just going to have to trust me on that. We've got a lead Lum Tyranitar, which will threaten early Stealth Rocks and KOs versus things like Deoxys Speed and Darkrai, and Mewtwo if it's not Specs or clicking the move Focus Blast. We have Pursuit, of course, to trap and hopefully remove opposing Giratina. Doesn't always work out that way, but we can often leave it low enough where the Giratina is really incentivized to just sack itself off, which means that Fori is unlocked to spin the hazards away, which is really important because if we can spin rocks away, then Ho-Oh can just kind of run rampant against a lot of teams. We have spikes and toxic spikes on our fortress, which give it really, really good tools for making progress against opposing teams. Our team is not like stall per se. This is probably closer to stall than what you would tend to see in DPP Ubers, but we do like to get the passive damage racked up so that we can have our cleaners clean up. And then we also have Boom as our last move to kind of just punish setup sweepers, like Rayquaza that thinks it's hot shit and gonna set up in front of our fortress with like a Dragon Dance or a Swords Dance. It's gonna get popped by a Boom. Giratina O is basically like ADV defensive Gengar, but we have priority Shadow Sneak. We don't have quite the same coverage either. I think we have, for example, Outrage on the Giratina, but like it is functioning in a similar sort of role as defensive Gengar for those of you who are, familiar with ADV. It comes in, it's got Levitate, and doesn't have to worry about the spikes so much. Spin blocks, which is important because we have access to literally all of the hazards that we can in DPP. Between our Tyranitar and our Fortress. Latias is going to switch into Kyogre, and it can revenge non-Scarf Garchomp because we're faster than it. So, kind of good roll compression there that stops us from getting 6-0'd by certain things. And we have Scarf Dialga here as the primary speed control. It does have quite a lot of bulk, so I'm saying think of it like Jolteon on steroids, like that special attacker that outspeeds everything. But I mean, for one, we might not outspeed other Scarfers. That is just the fact of the matter with Dialga. But the trade-off is that we're decently likely to survive one hit from a lot of things because Dialga's got good bulk. Importantly, because it's Steel type, it is not weak to Dragon, so if we're up against, say, like a Scarf Garchomp that is clicking Outrage and going nasty into our team because we only have Fortress as our Dragon type resist, Dialga can still live one of those Outrages and then kill back with a Dragon Pulse or a Draco Meteor. And then Ho-Oh's here to punish early Bronzong and Fortress, and threaten to spread burn to all the switch-ins. So it can be a really awkward Pokemon to switch into. And before that loops again, let's finally get on to the replay portion of this video. This is maybe a bit longer than I tend to do, but as most of my audience here is primarily ADV OU players, I felt like it was necessary to explain some more of the mechanic changes. So let's go ahead and get into the replays here. Whoops. Okay, that was the only one that got spoiled there. But I'm going to play the new music here. No points for those of you who guess what it's going to be. This is probably top 5 Pokemon songs. And either number 1 or number 2 for Pokemon themes, i.e. a legendary Pokemon theme. I love, like, the Ho-Oh music. It's, oh my god. Lugia, I'm sorry, you got mogged in this category. You got mogged, actually, Lugia gets mogged in a lot of categories when discussing Ho-Oh. Some people will say, oh, well, it wins the 1v1 because it's got a Hydro Pump. I mean, okay, sure, but, like, a lot of Pokemon win a 1v1 versus other Pokemon and are still, like, clearly not the better of the two. So, take that. Machoke wins a 1v1 versus Tyranitar, but are we saying Machoke is better than Tyranitar? Come on now. All right, enough of that. Lugia lovers, you can hate me all you want. I'm fine with that. So this replay is not really going to show off Ho-Oh. It's going to show off this Tyranitar. This is like literally exactly what this Tyranitar wants to do here. DOS sets the fast spike and gets one shot by payback. A lot of times DOS is running what's it called? A Focus Sash, which allows it to live one hit from full. If it's at 100%, it can't lose 100% of its HP. Basically is what it means. But if you leave it on 1 HP, at the end of the turn, it takes the Sandstorm damage, so we kill it anyway. So, yeah. Darkrai is going to come in, and it's going to go for Dark Void, but we have Lumberry, so we wake up, and then we go for Superpower, and we have enough attack that even if we get the minimum roll, we put Darkrai in range to just die to Sand. We have Latias to switch into this Scarf Water Spout, which is a really, really, really powerful move in this tier. I'm going to switch back to Tyranitar to set this Sand back up, predicting that the Dialga, or sorry, that the Kyogre would want to switch out there. Tyranitar is going to click Superpower, which does 39% to Kyogre, which notably means that it's really, really, really not able to go for Water Spout again, because it deals more damage based on how much HP the Kyogre has remaining. So they go for Ice Beam. I just stay in because I figured that you would probably want to click Ice Beam because I've revealed my Kyogre switch in as weak to it. So I just stay in and pay back, and now Kyogre's screwed because, yeah. If it switches out, I'm pursuing, so it's dead. And Tyranitar kind of just 6-0'd the team right there. So, yeah, tough one, but cool. You'll note that I'm not very high on ladder. For maybe, I don't know if you would expect me to be much higher. This is an ROA Spotlight tier, which means that it's only around for a month. Top of ladder right now is like 1,500, and I think there's only like less than 5 players who are above 1,500. Trust me when I say 1269 is like top 100. Not that that's saying much because there are barely 100 people playing this tier, which it's kind of unfortunate because I think this tier is really fun and I think a lot of you would enjoy it. And if you happen to catch this video in March of 2026, give it a try. I'm giving you a team to try out, and it's not a sample team, so maybe not everybody will know it. So that could be something cool. But for you ADVers who love Tyranitar smoked this. Look at that. Okay, now let's be a little bit more focused on the featured Pokemon of this live here. It's not a live, it's all replays. Tyranitar versus Darkrai. So once again, a matchup we'd like to see. My opponent's going to switch out, so maybe they know what my Tyranitar is up to. Notably, something maybe I didn't mention before, in Gen 4 and onwards, Sandstorm gives every rock type a 1.5 times special defense boost. So if Darkrai goes for Focus Blast, my Tyranitar is EV'd that it will live it. Unless it's Specs, then we can't live that. But even if they go for Focus Blast, because they know I'm Lumberry, even if they hit 70% of the time, that Darkrai is still dying. But since they went to Groudon, I'm going to go ahead and go to Giratina. There's sometimes Groudon is a Ho-Oh entry because it sets up the sun, and if you have a faster Ho-Oh than their Groudon, you are smoking them with the combination of Substitute and Sacred Fire. But if it is a faster Groudon and it is running a rock move, then we're kind of screwed if we go to Ho-Oh. So I decided to go to Giratina. It's a little bit safer. We can throw off a Will-O-Wisp as they're going to Thunder Wave us, and we get full parried. Great. Still going to throw off the Will-O-Wisp, and we managed to land into the Darkrai, who is now going to be taking burn damage. That could be good for us. We'll go to Tyranitar, because we take a Dark Pulse quite well, and now we're forcing them to click Focus Blast. We happen to die to that, which sucks. Maybe if I'm a little smarter, I could have pivoted to something that would eat the Focus Blast, like Giratina. Problem is, though, if I do that, then Darkrai is simply just going to be able to Dark Pulse again, and I'm just going to be switching back and forth, taking rocks damage on my Giratina, ultimately to sack off my Tyranitar anyway. So I didn't think that was worth it. We're just going to use this as an opportunity to get Dialga in, as they switch to Blissey on my Draco Meteor that misses. That sucks. Not the biggest deal, though. I can go to Fortress, who's going to eat a Thunder Wave, as my opponent is just like to spam here. They're going to go to Giratina, so I'm going to get my Toxic Spike up. So, Giratina is one of the most commonly used Pokemon in in DPP Ubers. I'm going to continue to mess this up. This is why you can't play more than one generation at a time. So Fortress is not really going to be able to spin on any team that has unrevealed, because Giratina is such a free switch into Fortress most of the time. So in this case, where I have the rocks are up on my side, well, I mean, even if the rocks weren't up on my side, and they have unrevealed, I'm going to be clicking either Spike or Toxic Spike. In this case, Toxic Spike, because I want that Groudon to be on a timer. Because, yeah, if we spin, we're just going to get blocked, and then Giratina is going to get value against us. I'm going to stay in. Giratina does not very, very commonly run a fire move. Sometimes it does, but not all the time. So we can use the Giratina to get spikes up. You might say, well, this seems like a bad idea, right? Because Fortress is taking a lot of damage. It's not very likely going to be able to spin against a lot of this team anymore. But that's fine. Ho-Oh can still achieve value even if it has to take Stealth Rocks damage, and I think that's what this replay is going to demonstrate. Darkrai is getting switched into here to Dragon Pulse, so now it's dead. And we're going to see Dialga switch in. That probably indicates Scarf, I thought, but I just stay in and go for Dragon Pulse anyway. They go for a Fire Blast, trying to catch my Fortress switching in, thinking that I would try to catch a Draco Meteor. But on this turn, I realized, oh, I'm faster, and you didn't even click a move that would do real damage to Latias. In fact, he missed anyway. This is really, really good, because Dialga is sometimes a little bit challenging to break through for this team. Because your own Dialga is only doing like about 50-ish% with Draco Meteor. Obviously, it's not spammable either. So, yeah, Dialga can be a problem. But now that it's this low, I can just click Dragon Pulse and kill it. So if we can break through this Blissey, Dragon Pulse might be a win con. And if I can get to a point where Dialga kills all with Dragon Pulse, I'm very likely to win. I'm going to get Fortress in versus the Blissey. I'm going to get Seismic Toss for my troubles, which means that I'm very, very likely to just die on this turn, as my opponent will go for another Seismic Toss. But the Blissey is toxic. The sand is offsetting its leftovers. It's going down to 37%, and this is the Ho-Oh entry point. So now Blissey is guaranteed dead here if it stays in versus the Ho-Oh, which means that Dialga is getting unlocked as a win condition. I'm going to substitute in front of the Blissey, because if they soft boil, they're taking huge toxic damage, and I'm getting a free recover here. And if they switch, I'm threatening burn and all of that. But they're going to stay in with the Blissey. So I possibly gave them an out, at least temporarily, to do something with the Blissey. But they're going to sack it anyway. So I go for Sacred Fire there. Honestly, I probably should have tried to play for keeping a sub up versus my opponent when they have to switch out. But maybe they were going to try to go down swinging with their Blissey anyway. So This maybe works out just as well as it would have been if I tried to get greedy with it. Giratina is going to lock into Outrage. So I go for a Brave Bird, which puts it at 31%. Now it's super duper going to die to anything. Ho-Oh, unfortunately, is going to die, but yeah, we can just go Dialga. We're outspeeding, and Dragon Pulse will kill. I get a crit. It doesn't matter, obviously, but now Groudon is in, taking Spikes damage, taking Toxic for its troubles. I'm going to switch to Giratina and stay in as long as it takes for Groudon to chip down into range for my Dialga's Dragon Pulse. I missed my Draco there, which kind of sucks. But then I hit this one. Now Groudon's just dead. Dialga's in. I'm going to sack my Giratina because I don't really need it. It's paralyzed and below 50%, like it's not doing anything anyway. I can go to Dialga here. This is confirmed not Scarf from my opponent because my Latias outsped it. Now they're going to have their own Latias as the last Pokemon here. This could be dangerous because, yeah, Draco Meteor does kill my Dialga outright. And if they went for a Calm Mind, there are some roles where Latias can live all of that, and if that happened I would have been boned, but fortunately I'm able to get my Latias in, and I have max HP, so I'm able to live that Draco, and I finish them off with Dragon Pulse. Max HP Latias is apparently not that common in Ubers, so sometimes you can catch your opponent off guard there. Maybe my opponent had like knowledge of the tier and said, oh, I should kill their Latias even at -2. Because maybe they're a really highly special attack invested Lati, but I was able to clutch it out there. And that is in part because Ho-Oh was able to force the Blissey removal and open up Dialga to kind of just break through this team. Like, look at how many kills Dialga gets after the Blissey. So it kills that Giratina, which is important because this Giratina is paralyzed, so it might not have been able to get its Sneak off. Latias is going to take huge damage from a Shadow Sneak on the switch out, so Dialga is really the best thing to finish that off. It pressures this Groudon in such a way that it has to kill itself off to the Giratina to really do anything, because otherwise my Dialga would have finished it off. Their Dialga is owned by this, and then we chipped it into range for our Latias' Dragon Pulse to finish off. So that's huge, and all facilitated by, well, by Fortress getting these hazards up, but also by Ho-Oh forcing that Blissey to kind of kill itself off. Next game here, we're up against Constan, I guess. Focus Blast comes down and only does 83% as I'm able to Superpower. Don't get the one-shot kill because of the Focus Sash, but Sandstorm will finish him off. Scizor comes in. I'm going to use this as a Ho-Oh entry as they go for U-turn. And they get Kyogre in. Kyogre is a little bit rough for Ho-Oh, so we're going to have to switch. We'll take a Water Spout there. That is Scarf Water Spout. And we're going to drop a Thunder. And we get the 30% para on Giratina. This is one of the things that is kind of awkward about the tier. Like, because Kyogre is so prevalent, there are a lot of Thunders going around, which means there are a lot of para opportunities. So I go to Tyranitar here with the idea of, okay, if this Giratina goes for like Will-O-Wisp or Dragon Move or whatever, then this is probably expendable at this stage. Honestly, I should have saved the Tyranitar to try to clear the weather, because rain can be an issue. So now sometimes this team is okay with rain being up because we have Thunder users in Lati and Dialga, but it does limit Ho-Oh quite a lot. When the rain is up, it's really, really difficult to get a lot of damage with Sacred Fire. And this is going to end up being a Tyranitar sack here. I did try to get my rocks up there, but unfortunately we're not able to do so. We're going to Brave Bird. Don't kill the Giratina. Giratina gets full parried. Okay, that's good for us. Arguably, I should have been clicking substitute, trying to fish for the Giratina to either miss or get fully paralyzed, and then Brave Birded to kill it. But we're essentially getting that out of this. We're going to get a Sacred Fire off on Dialga while the sand is still up, so that's really, really nice. They go for Draco Meteor, which is fine, I guess. I go for Recover. This is arguably a turn that I should have went for Substitute, though, because if Kyogre comes in, I heal up enough to get into another possible sub range. But I could also just Brave Bird behind my sub into the Kyogre, stop it from being able to click Water Spout, which is a good way to neutralize the Kyogre. I'm going to Recover with Lottie as they go to Giratina, which kind of sucks because I'm going to take 50% from Shadow Sneak. But, I mean, it means that we're effectively in the same spot that we were before. Kyogre's going for Ice Beam. If I was able to, like, save my Tyranitar sack, this would have been a great turn to sack it, because I don't have a great switch into Ice Beam right now. I guess I have Fortress, and I could have went there on pretty obvious Ice Beam, but if my opponent clicked Water Spout anyway, that could have been rough. So I go to Giratina, who is going to force damage on Kyogre. At the very least, its Water Spout is not super duper clickable anymore. And now I can get the Fortress entry. I'm going to click Toxic Spike to put the Kyogre on a timer. And then I'm going to click Spike, except I get full parried. And I get crit. Okay, so I don't even get my Spike up, which is not good, because I would love for Scizor and Dialga not to be able to just switch in all the time. Now I'm kind of forced to go to Ho-Oh here against this Thunder Dialga to try to get a burn to make progress against it. And yeah, Ho-Oh is getting kind of chipped there. I probably could have tried to get a substitute up. And if I'm faster, then there's ways that I could maybe try to PP stall the Thunders if I did such a thing. But alas, I'm not a smart person. So I end up in a situation where I have to go for another Sacred Fire. I don't get the burn. Rain does not stop burn from happening, by the way, in case you were wondering. I gotta lock into Dragon Pulse here. I take a Draco Meteor, get down to 4%, which is bad because now Scizor Bullet Punch is killing me. And I'm going to have to sack the Dialga. We get Latios in here. They're going to switch to Kyogre as I Thunder. Critical hit, kill the Kyogre. That's actually not great for me. I have to get a crit or a full para, and I don't manage to do so, and Scizor will kill me there. So this is maybe a sort of cautionary tale here about when to preserve your low HP Tyranitar to attempt to get more value out of your Ho-Oh here. See, he didn't have Rocks up. So if I was able to keep the rain off and had really, really powerful Sacred Fires to throw out, then Ho-Oh could have like cleaned up on this team. It would have been really nice into the Dialga, especially if Dialga is at risk of missing its Thunders, and Scizor is never a switch in. But alas, I played bad and lost the game, so there you go. Next one. My opponent has a lead Ho-Oh versus my Tyranitar. I'm going to get Rocks up, because that's fine. If I get burned, I have Lumberry, so it's not the end of the world. But my opponent is going to be a little bit too cautious and switch the Ho-Oh out there. They would have been fine if they stayed in, but they're going to go to Groudon. Groudon is a really good partner for Ho-Oh because A, it clears rain, and B, it lets you click really powerful Sacred Fires. As you'll note, my team does not have Groudon. There's maybe an argument you could try to slot it in somewhere, but I still like what this team's got going on for it. And Ho-Oh is not necessarily a win condition. It's more like a mid-game value getter, like spreading burns, breaking for certain things in the back. Really good into like things like Bronzong and Blissey, which are things that stop Dialga from winning. So, yeah. But we are going to switch our Ho in on the Groudon, who's clicking Dragon Claw. This is a more offensively oriented Groudon. But they're going to switch right away because they don't have a rock move. And I get Sacred Fire into Tentacruel. I do 50%. And I'm going to sub in the face of the Tentacruel. Go ahead and click Hydro Pump for me, buddy, as I go for Recover. They go to their Ho-Oh, but I am faster and I get my Brave Bird off. They go for their Brave Bird. But because I'm faster here, it's really, really over for that Ho-Oh. And I'm up to 80% here as they are going to Giratina O. I'm going to go for Sacred Fire, try to get a burn. Don't manage to do so, but I am faster and they lock into Outrage. So I can just recover here. And we're going to wait for the confusion to happen. And then try to get a sub on a turn of full confusion. There we go. They're still confused here, so I can go for Recover. Confusion ends. Then they Outrage again. Okay. Well, we can loop this one more time. And we can even throw in the substitutes to sort of limit the potential for crit to ruin our day. Unfortunately, when you're locked into Outrage, like the second and third clicks don't count for PP usage, so it's not that easy to stall Outrage PP. But it's still a possibility. We have a lot of substitutes and recovers remaining, even though we are burning through them right now. But eventually we're going to get a nice turn where the Giratina is confused and hurts itself. He tries to go for a Thunder there, which doesn't really make any sense to me. 50% accurate. And you have to hit through confusion? Like, no. But yeah, now I'm high HP and I've got my sub up and I crit and kill with Brave Bird there. And now it's super duper over, right? Groudon, if Groudon comes in, free Sacred Fire and I'm probably killing the Groudon. If Tentacruel comes in, well, I'm killing that and I can get my rocks up without fear of spin. I don't even need the spin block. I can get my Toxic Spikes up, which is really, really important. And I don't even know what these last two are, but they could be things that just lose to Ho-Oh as well. So Ho-Oh kind of 6-0'd from here, which is incredible. So yeah, I mean, this is like probably the best showing for Ho-Oh, and it shows that it is a really, really good Pokemon at countering some of these Groudon teams that you might see. All right, this is going to be the last replay for the video. This has been a abnormally long Tetrafolium video, which is maybe good for some of you. I know that I've been a little bit slower on the uploads as it is, because it's, I don't know, it's kind of hard to get stuff out. I'm busy, but I still, of course, like doing this, and I will do it as long as I am capable of finding the time to do so. Tyranitar versus Mew. Okay. Against Mew, I'm inclined to just get my rocks up. Mew can have a lot of things on the lead, but one of its more common ideas is Swords Dance with Explosion, or I think Self-Destruct, actually. They go for Psychic. Let me check Elo. 1060. Okay, it's possible they didn't know that Tyranitar is immune to Psychic, or maybe they're just, like, predicting like crazy. But even still, I feel like Psychic is a really, really strange click there. But I pay back and I get a critical hit and I kill the Mew, which I think matters. I don't think I kill Mew in one shot without that. I'm going to go to Fortress on the Jirachi. This is probably a Scarf Rachi with Ironhead trying to flinch me out here. But it's not necessarily incentivized to do so versus Fortress, who could spin, making the Mew's efforts to get the rocks up all in vain. And I can also continue to get my own hazards on the 40% chances that I don't get flinched by the Iron Head. But he's going to go to a spin blocker. Makes sense. That's usually what you do against Fortress. But I'm going to go to Tyranitar as he goes for a Calm Mind. He gets a critical hit Dragon Pulse there as I go for Payback. Don't quite get the kill, and it does suck because I will die. But I can go for Pursuit in case he wants to switch out there. He reveals himself to be the Rest Talk Giratina. This is also called Sleeping Beauty, the set. But I managed to kill him off there. That crit, I mean, it did 67%. There you go. That's funny. But even if I didn't get the roll to kill, he was very likely dead to Sandstorm thereafter anyway. But now Giratina is gone, and I still have a relatively healthy Fortress. I can spin for sure, but I'm not going to do so versus the Dialga, who is going to Fire Blast. That's the turn to sack off the Tyranitar. Note. In Gen 4, unlike in Gen 3, a Pokemon dying does not end the turn. So, your opponent will be able to use moves still. In the case of my opponent there, it was good for me because I was able to scout that they had Fire Blast, so I know what I should be... I can narrow down what set it is, as well as I know to be a little bit careful with my Fortress as I switch my Fortress into the Dialga. But additionally to that, it uses up that PP, which could matter. Probably not going to matter in this matchup, but it could matter. So this is something that is... It's just different about Gen 4. The thing that does get kind of interesting, though, is, like, if my opponent tries to, like, Rock Sack against my Fortress, I could get a Spike Up on that turn still, which could be bad for my opponent. And it could also be bad, like, against things that, like, set up Calm Mind or Dragon Dance or all other manner of setup moves. Or Recover. You can't deny a Blissey Soft Boil by exploding and not killing it. Keep that in mind. I am going to switch my Fortress in here, who takes an Aura Sphere. I was greeting that my opponent would go for a Draco Meteor there, which would have made it very, very easy for me to switch into any of my other Pokemon on what would have been a -2 Fire Blast. But they have Aura Sphere, and that's a really good click into Dialga. It happens to be a pretty good click into my Fortress as well. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to spin in this game, so I'm just sacking the Fortress. But we do manage to get some pretty good chip on the Dialga because of its own Life Orb. And that's going to put it in range for my Scarf Dialga's Draco Meteor. He's going to go to Jirachi, who's probably just U-turning here. And it does. Ho-Oh takes that really, really nicely, but doesn't super duper matter. He does go to Groudon, though. So notably, because Groudon reset the weather, I get my leftovers healing, which puts me at a spot where I could switch my Ho-Oh out. But at this stage of the game, I'm pretty ahead, and if this happens to be a Groudon set that I outspeed, I might be able to abuse it to just win the game with Ho-Oh right here. Sand being up is great for me. And it is the set that does not break the Ho-Oh substitute. Oh boy. That's really bad for you, because I can just keep sub and recovering as you are clicking in vain as the poison is ticking down on you. I go for a Sacred Fire there to chip this Groudon down. And I can I put it in the exact right spot where I could sub and then recover and then win the game there. But unfortunately, this Groudon may have some attack investment because its Dragon Claw was able to break my sub there. That's a little unfortunate, but it is what it is. I do manage to get my sub here. I'm at 40%. It would have been nice to be at like 100%, but it is what it is. U-turn does break my sub there, which is kind of funny, but you have to account for all the damage it took on the previous turn. Mewtwo is not a switch in, as Ho-Oh is going to murk that with HP Fire, or not HP Fire, with Sacred Fire. And then Jirachi last. Okay, Jirachi last could maybe do something with Iron Head flinches against the Ho-Oh, but it would have to get a lot of them, and Ho-Oh is a relatively bulky Pokemon who resists Iron Head and has pressure. So you have to get really, really lucky for starters, and even if you manage to do so, you probably don't have enough Iron Heads to even click into the rest of my team after that. So yeah, my opponent makes sense that they forfeit there. And that's just another Feltoning by Ho-Oh. How many kills did it get in this game? After the rocks were up. So, I mean, it doesn't get credit for that Dialga kill, but it gets credit for this kill on Groudon. And it kills the Mewtwo. And it would have killed the Jirachi. So that's 3 kills that Ho-Oh gets there. Even after rocks have gone up and I lost my spinner. So this just goes to show, like, yes, rocks are a big, big deal for Ho-Oh, but it could still achieve a lot of value if you're up in the right matchup, if you get the right positioning, etc., etc. So, yeah, my opponent really, when they U-turned with Jirachi, they should have went to Mewtwo. Going Groudon there was a throw and a half. Maybe they thought that I would have been scared out, or maybe they thought that Groudon would just beat Ho-Oh somehow. But no, I stood my ground and owned him from there, so that's cool. This has been the Ho-Oh and DPP Ubers. Maybe one day we'll do Ho-Oh and ADV Ubers, or maybe we'll go back to ADV OU if this video performs horrendously. It is something different, I understand that, and I know that my core audience is probably here mostly to watch ADV OU, but I've been playing this month, and I have so many games with it now. I figured I had to do something with it, and I want to put the good word out there that this is a fun tier. This is, like, I'm playing one of the slowest paced teams in the format, probably. And, like, all of these games are ending in, like, 30-ish turns. So if you're really, really into some quicker paced games, this is a great format for you. So let's see you on the ladder for the last week of this month. And vote for it again when it's up in the rotation, because I'm definitely going to play it again. But yeah, this has been Tetrafolium, and we'll see you for the next video.